Syrian refugees enrolled in public schools in Lebanon. So today I will just walk you quickly through our agenda. We're going to be going to have a couple of presentations, and then we're going to also watch a video about the project that I'm talking about, and then we'll have a 5 to 7 minute break before we continue with our presentations and conclude with questions and answers. You are encouraged to add your questions and answers on the chat box, and we will make sure to address them to the speakers. We have speakers from different backgrounds today, even different regions in the world joining us. So I will begin by giving you a brief idea of what the project is about. The idea of the project started by in-depth research that the Isam Paris Institute did, basically looking at refugee youth and refugee children access to education in Lebanon and other countries within the other host countries within the MENA region. And so we did find that there was kind of decline in enrollment when kids started to move into secondary school. And this is why we started to also question then if there's a decline in this enrollment or a drop in that, or kind of a break in that pipeline, what would then happen when these kids move to higher education? At the same time, research at the Isam Paris Institute also looked at higher education for refugees. And we did also find that at the beginning of the Syrian refugee crisis, the enrollment in higher education was quite a little higher than usual, but then it started to drop in the years to a few years after that, the start of the crisis. And this was particularly because of that break in the pipeline of education, or the transition from secondary to higher education. And that's the purpose of the project. It is to make sure that we can, have more information or learn more about vulnerable youth and refugee youth as they move through the pipeline of education and as they transition from basic or general education into higher education or other venues of education or areas. So with that, I'm going to give you a brief project overview of this particular project that we designed. So it had several aspects. One of them was executed by the Isam Paris Institute, while others were commissioned. And so I'm going to talk to you today about the project that was executed by the Isam Paris Institute. And that includes several phases. The first phase was the pre-implementation. So before we went ahead and started to figure out what we need to do in order to help those youth, we did a needs assessment in order to understand better where are the gaps that the students have when they are thinking of whether they want to pursue further education after school or not. And so that needs assessment targeted students who were in grade 11. So those kids who were not yet at the final stage or before, the year before thinking of applying to university. And it was implemented in several schools in grade 11 within particularly Beirut and the Mount Lebanon area. Next, we did the implementation phase where we designed a program, the pre-college program, mentoring program, which my colleague, Dr. Anja Asman, will talk a little bit more about. And that program targeted 21st century skills and life skills to help students learn more about those skills. I asked my colleagues to please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. You're not presenting. And so it immersed them in also student experiential learning and also introduced them to available scholarships. And the last phase included the post-implementation, which was after those select students actually engaged in hands-on experiences within the university at AUB. So we actually brought the students, as public school students, into university to live and experience classes with professors from the university. After that, we asked those students to go back to their communities and become community ambassadors and transmit to a certain extent what they had learned to their colleagues and peers at the university. And finally, here we are, we're disseminating the findings, but we're also hoping to be able to build on the findings from this project in order to inform policy and practice as well. In addition to this work that we had done, we also commissioned a couple of research studies to further inform us about the gaps within that transitioning phase. Next, please. And so I'll give you a brief overview of the demographics within the project. So in the needs assessment, we had 944 students from grade 10, from grades 11 participate in 23 public schools all over the governorates in Lebanon. And so it was a national survey, needs assessment survey. The participants were about 81% Lebanese, 12.5% Syrian, and the 5% remaining were Palestinian. We had about 65% female and 35% males. Now, must also mention here that the needs assessment was administered to all specialties, meaning those kids who were in sciences or the arts. And then in second phase, where we invited only a select number of students to participate in the hands-on experiences at the university, the focus was only on 11 public schools in Beirut and Mount Lebanon, and that is a limitation due to the availability of resources both within the university and outside. We had 106 grade 11 students participate with us, and that engaged with 25 faculty members from 10 departments across the university. And there was kind of a balance between the nationalities of the students participating, but also again here we see a slightly higher number of females who joined that program. And just to give you an idea, next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of the departments that participated, we had 10 departments from which faculty members, senior faculty members, professors and associate professors actually worked closely with the grade 11 students from public schools to give them an idea of what is each of those disciplines or each of those majors. So for example, for agriculture, architecture and whatnot, you would see students doing things and performing tasks that they would actually perform if they had been enrolled at the university. So we had agriculture, architecture, biology, chemistry, computer science, education, electrical engineering, media studies, nursing, and physics. And the last thing before I give the chance to my colleague, Dr. Anja, to continue the presentation on the findings of the study or the project, I would like to mention that the aim of this is to actually allow the students to be immersed in a context where they can think about or see or envision what it would be like, what it would be like to actually, if I were to study education, what are my options for employment? If I were to study chemistry, do I end up only as a teacher or whatnot, or in a lab? Well, no. The professors who worked with these students actually exposed them to many opportunities in terms of employment beyond what is expected. So with that, I would give the chance now to Dr. Anja Osman, my colleague, to pursue the next slides. But before I do that, I would like to give you a brief overview of who our presenter is. Dr. Anja Osman is a practice teacher coordinator and a lecturer at the Department of Education at the American University of Beirut. She's an educational consultant as well. Her wide experience includes science teaching and consultation on national and international developmental projects, ranging from STEM education to effective school leadership. She's collaborated with the Lebanese Ministry of Education and Higher Education towards the improving of education standards in Lebanon, building vibrant school learning communities, which are better suited to meet summons of a rapidly and continuously changing world. Currently, Dr. Osman is co-leading this program, the Pre-College Mentoring Program, which equips secondary school students with the knowledge and skills essential to help them make a well-informed decision in selecting their college and career path in more subtle ways. With that, I give the mic over to my colleague, Dr. Anja. Please go ahead.
You need to unmute yourself, Dr. Anja. Dr. Anja, you need to unmute yourself. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect, yes.
Okay. Again. So I'd like to draw their attention that today's presentation constitutes a comprehensive rather than an extensive summary of the findings of the huge data collected from the different phases of the pre-college mentoring program, and that all findings will be included in a research paper that will be published by the IFI. Okay? So for phase one, which stated that we have a survey administered to the whole population of students. We have 944 secondary school students from grade 10 to grade 11. And this survey, it explores student perceptions related to 4 constructs. To what extent they practice the 21st century skills at their school, their academic interest, what are the top 3 college majors they are really interested in specializing. Also, their ability to apply the life skills, for example, decision-making skills, self-directing skills, and also their perspective related to the importance or the value of tertiary education and means for financing their studies. Results showed that all these 21st critical thinking skills were not highly practiced at schools. As you can see, all below the average, with the critical thinking being the most practiced at school and global connection, the least skills practiced. Results also show that these skills are not equally practiced in the teaching subjects in the school curriculum. And surprisingly, if you can see the table, science itself as a teaching subject does not exist or is not rated by the student as being a subject where these 21st century skills are practiced. And another interesting finding that the student associated creativity and innovation with technology and not the other subjects. For academic interest, it seems the students still opt to choose the prestigious, what we call the prestigious fields like engineering and medicine being their first choices, in addition to business. Even with the second choice, still business and engineering rated very high. When asking them what you plan after high school, we have a positive really result that about 91% of the students, they want to join universities, and even about 50% they reported that they want to earn even a higher education level, let's degree for a master and PhD. However, these students reported that although they value the tertiary education, but they believe that universities, mainly the private universities, they are very expensive. And they cannot afford joining universities unless they receive financial aid or any type of scholarships. Also, they reported that a high percentage, 71.20%, reported that the application mechanism or the process to universities is very difficult and complicated, and this might hinder some and demotivate them from applying to universities. We asked them who decides which university you join, and interestingly that many said about 58.30% stated that they have their own decision. And also we have 57% that they can have input from their parents. And if you notice that the teachers, school teachers, they play a major role in helping or supporting the students to take a decision. We have about 32 or 31.90%. They believe that their teachers can have a say to help them decide which universities they to be enrolled. In phase 2, where the implementation took place, and we compared the student answer to the same pre-post test given before the implementation and after the implementation, it shows that there is an increase or a gain in knowledge related to all the fields, whether the agriculture, architecture, biology, chemistry, computer, electrical engineering, media, nursing, and physics. And the most gain was evident in agriculture and in electrical engineering. As for the education, you can see that we put it separate because the format or the structure of the test was different from the other subject areas. It was mainly an open-ended test for education. And about 80% of the students, after visiting an inclusion school that stepped together, they changed their perspective related to the right of students with special needs to be mainstreamed and integrated and included in irregular class rooms. Also students said that they become aware that having or enrolling, joining an education department doesn't mean they will become only teachers. So there is a wide scope of education-related jobs. For example, working in clinical psychology or leading an organization or working even as a consultant. Also, they reported that they became aware of effective teaching strategies like inquiry and also about STEAM, about effective tips for reading strategies, and they hope that these strategies to be applied in their schools. For the university preparatory program, which delivered about 10 hours, 10 training session hours, providing students with information about organizations which provide scholarships and the eligibility criteria and how they also for the admission criteria for colleges, study skills and life skills. Students, they gained in-depth knowledge and information about scholarship, study, and life skills. For results from the evaluation survey delivered to students, it showed that a high percentage of students, about 89.870%, they said that they become aware of the college choice and career. Also a high percentage, the 84, about 85%, they become familiar with the college admission. With a less percentage, 65.8%, they stated that they know how to plan for their university education. Findings from phase 3, where we asked the students to transfer their learning to the school community after they worked, and we encouraged them to use creativity and collaboration to develop themselves and design a plan to transfer all what they have learned in the intervention or in the pre-college parenting program to their school community. And these are some photos taken from the date of where they demonstrated their what they have done at the school in the form of posters. Students were really very excited and enthusiastic about discussing how they plan their work. And here we have 11 students from 11 public schools. We have 106 students participated in this phase, and thankfully for the AUB staff who volunteered to evaluate the work and the level of performance, and all students were awarded a certificate and a prize. Interview with the school principals, they reported that students were highly interested and satisfied with the student work. And this project, the thing that they have done, reinforced student knowledge and strengthened many skills. In addition to the 4C skills, they also about the leadership and entrepreneurship skills. In the follow-up, where the research team, they visited the 11 schools and asked the students to complete a survey to know how many students they applied to universities or not. we have interesting results where by the end of the training, the results showed that we have about 89.9, about 90% of the students, they reported or they claimed that they are ready to apply to universities. However, when they became in grade 12, these only 16, let's say 15.5% of students applied to universities, and this was not expected. When we asked them the reasons for not applying, they said that they still find difficulty in choosing a major. And many of them, they missed the deadline. And for grade 12, usually students, they are under the pressure of preparing to official exams. And in addition to the spread of the coronavirus and the economic sets of the country. These students also, when completing the survey, they said they cannot enter the university unless they receive scholarships and financial aid. Or otherwise, if not receiving them, they have to work themselves. About 45%, they said, I have to work in order to finance my education, college education. So these findings, how do they impact these school practices and education policies, in our opinion? There should be a new approach to be implemented or to be applied. First, the curriculum, based on the findings, the curriculum, whether in the content or in classroom teaching and even assessment, need to address the 21st century skills. Second, there is a need, an urgent need to design college readiness program, a program which support them academically in their content, in the performance, but also in the well-being, addressing the well-being of the students, how they choose their college, and applying to colleges. And we think that a new policy should be set for graduation by the Ministry of Education of a possibility of having a program or asking or requesting from all secondary school students, especially grade 12 students, to complete a college preparatory program before joining universities. Not only this, we believe that such a program, the college or the school to college transition program, should be a key element, a crucial element in the school improvement plan, in the annual school improvement plan, and designed in a way to be aligned with the curriculum, and also include professional development of the staff, of the teacher, and how to implement such a program, including also the preparation of a school counselor that would help in managing such a program to ensure that students, irrespective of their academic performance, to join universities. And two things they have to make it about: how can we make such programs sustainable and to further scale up to include all students in all schools all over Lebanon. However, such a goal, a long-term goal, cannot be achieved unless there is a real research partnership between three big entities, between the schools, between researchers at universities, and educational centers like DOPS, or we have the CERT or other educational, even with NGOs or industry. And this research, in reality, this research partnership could be different from the traditional model of collaboration between these entities. It should be a mutualistic with long-term relationship that use intentional strategies to address the problems relevant to schools' needs after doing a research at schools. In addition, we have to what's going on nowadays. We are confronting, the whole educational system is confronted with the spread of the COVID-19. And according to the report published by the World Bank 2020, they believe that The most at disadvantaged children and youth will be those from the what we call the marginalized population, that they will extreme, and this might lead to a high level of inequality, even with a high level of dropout from which might happen due to the conditions or the unstable conditions in the country. Also, the report from the International Labour Organization estimate that nearly 25 million jobs will be lost globally due to the coronavirus. And with this taking this into consideration, we believe that new knowledge, new skills will emerge. Skills, not only the 21st century skills, but we have the skill about the resilience, about adaptation, adaptability. These are central skills to be taught in addition to the 21st century skills, in addition to other skills, what we call them the future skills, these future skills, scenario building, imagination, imagining solutions to upcoming problems which do not exist yet, but they might emerge due to the unchanging situation taking all over global. So thank you for listening, and I hope that such findings could provide more in-depth insight of how the different partners could collaborate to provide a real solution to to having a system and prepare these students for a new realities and for a future of education. Thank you. I will stop there.
Can you hear me? Okay, so thank you very much for this overview, Dr. Anja. And as you can see, I mean, one thing that one really thinks about is that, unfortunately, the context the vulnerable youth live in have now become more challenging. And as we've seen from the presentation, there were, already obstacles facing those youth before the current context and the current situation, whether it's the socioeconomic situation in Lebanon or the COVID that has hit the country. And so with that, even the transitioning of those youth before the context had been challenging. So with that presentation, we're going to move on to the video, which my colleagues at IFR are going to stream. And this video actually will show you the kind of the experience that the students engaged in at the university and the different activities they were immersed in as students or university students to be. Actually, we don't hear the sound, Suzanne. There's no sound. We're very sorry, technology is a blessing, but sometimes we need time to adapt. And so that's why probably we can't hear the sound, that maybe for some glitch in the system. But there is a description below. All right, we're going to stop the video right now and allow our colleagues at Verify to manage the glitches that are there. And we're going to move on to our colleagues from the Modern University of Business and Sciences. We have Dr. Nael and our colleague Diana. So I'm just going to give you a brief presentation of our presenters. Dr. Nael Alami is a molecular neuroscientist who earned his doctoral degree from the Ohio State University and worked at St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, where he investigated disease mechanisms involved in motor neuron diseases. He joined Stanford University in 2014, where his research interests expanded to include global health, education, technology, and the use of innovative pedagogies to address public health challenges. Dr. Alami was also a visiting professor at San Jose State University in California and a visiting scientist at Harvard and Columbia Universities. In 2019, Dr. Alami was appointed as the provost at the MUBS, or Modern University for Business and Science, where he had founded and led the Virtual Exchange Program, which draws on empirical research in the learning sciences and the leverage best practices in technology. Dr. Alami's research is published in leading scientific journals describing his work and the fields that he specializes in. As for Ms. Diana Maddah, she has a master's degree in public health from the Faculty of Health Sciences at the American University of Beirut, and she's currently pursuing her PhD in public health in a joint program between the Lebanese University and the American University of Beirut. She is very active in the humanitarian relief work, where she was assigned as a member of advisory committees on women leaders in global health, run by Stanford. Several awards in her throughout her work. She presents and attends many local and international leadership workshops in London and other countries. Diana joined the Modern University for Business and Science in 2016 as a public health instructor and a research director in 2018. She's recently working as risk communication lead with the UK emergency medical team in Beirut as well. She's published many academic papers that showcase her work. With that, I'll give the floor to Dr. Alami and Ms. Maddah. Please go ahead. And don't forget to type up your questions in the Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Hannah. I appreciate everyone being with us today. I'm going to try to share my screen. And thank you, Dr. Inja, for a wonderful project and wonderful results. My only concern is MUBS logo is absent from the university's logos on your slide. So it's my pleasure to tell you about the data we've collected from our project addressing high dropout rates and barriers to tertiary education of students from vulnerable communities in Lebanon. The objectives of the project is to identify the main fears, concerns, and challenges of vulnerable Lebanese and Syrian communities transitioning from secondary to tertiary education, and to offer research-based recommendations for policymakers and relief experts to address and mitigate challenges leading to low academic performance and high dropout rates that we observe among vulnerable youth in Lebanon, be it among youth living in rural areas and underserved areas in Lebanon who are Lebanese, and those who are living in Syrian settlements who are Syrian refugees. So we chose 4 Lebanese governors for our study, North Lebanon, Mount Lebanon, the Beqa, and Beirut. And the students were in public health, in public high school, schools around the country from grades 11 and 12, both males and females. And they were all from vulnerable communities, specifically in public high schools that had the highest number of students within the governorate or muhafazat. We also had held focus groups with parents of the students and with teachers of those students, as well as with NGOs who are working with students from vulnerable communities to get their input on the topic. We used both qualitative and quantitative data collection and analysis, and I'll tell you a little bit further about those in a few minutes. We definitely addressed the ethical considerations that are to be taken into account. We had received the approval of the Ministry of Education and Higher Education, as well as consent from the students' parents and other participants. And all surveys and transcripts are saved in safe place, and the results of the study are disseminated to the participants and hopefully will be available to the public through research and through peer-reviewed journal articles. The demographics of the students, as I said, 935 students from current students from public schools. We also made sure that we had Syrian students that included 95 students who are Syrian and currently studying in Lebanese schools. That amounted to 10%, almost 10%, or about 10% of the total number of students who participated. By gender, we had 61 or 62% of the students, Lebanese students, were males and 38% were females, and 69% of the Syrian students were males and 31% were females. The students' age was around 16 years to 17 years old. The Syrian students were a little bit older with an average age of 18 years old. We had 64.5 or 0.6 of the students had repeated their Bac 1 class, and 35.4 had repeated their Bac 2 class in high school. Distribution of the students by region, the majority of the students came from Beirut or were in Beirut, but for the Syrian students, the second most or highest population was in the Bekaa Valley, which is expected given the number of refugees in the region. When it comes to family income, what stood out was that for Syrian students, there was a lower income, which means that the Syrian students came from a lower socioeconomic status background, with the majority of their parents earning between $500 to $700 a month, while the majority of the Lebanese students, were mostly equally distributed across the different categories. We also looked into the marital status of the students because that also offers some insight into the environmental support and the context from where the students come from. For the Lebanese students, the majority of 86.5% had their parents currently married, and 8.7% had divorced parents. When it came to the Syrian population of students, 58% had married parents, which is significantly less than the Lebanese student population, and 22.9% of the students had divorced parents. So it's something that stood out. When it came to the educational level, that's something that we paid some attention to, because it also offers some insight into the expectations of parents regarding their children's academic attainment. We observed a kind of equal distribution across the parents of both the Lebanese and the Syrian student populations. So using surveys with the students who are currently high school students, these are not students who have dropped out of high school or universities yet. So these are the 934 students who have responded to the survey. This was a respondents rate of 34%. All students were rarely absent from school. The majority believed that they can acquire higher education degrees and that they are capable of doing so. 60% reported having a supportive environment. Something that stood out to us is that 82% report having good relationships with their teachers. And I say that this stood out because later on in our data, you'll see that several students reported either bullying or discriminatory relationship or discriminatory behavior from their teachers. So around half of the students find their classes interesting. In the surveys, we also found that there was a similar perception among the students, the Lebanese and the Syrian students, regarding the importance of education. In Lebanese students, 86.9% thought or perceive education as very highly important, and 3.3% of them don't think education is important. There was a statistically significant difference between those and the Syrian students who thought that education is very important, because only 72% or 73% of the Syrian students conceived of education as highly important, while 12.5% of the students thought that education is not highly important. And we will probe that a little bit in our study. There was also a direct correlation that we observed between students who perceived education as highly important and the number of times that they repeated their class level, with 85% of the students who thought of education as highly important not repeating their class years, and 11 or 12% of them repeated their classes once, and that percentage decreased with the number of repetitions. Now, we held focus group discussions with students who had already dropped out of college or of high schools to get their interpretations and perceptions about education and their economic status. So students believed that education is essential for better job opportunities in those groups, although they have dropped out. They do believe that through education, students can support their families financially. Many students in the Bekaa region especially claim that chances of getting jobs in Lebanon are very low. And other participants in Beirut mostly think that it's more beneficial to start making money immediately rather than wait for graduation. So despite the fact that they believe education is beneficial to get better jobs, they do think that under the economic pressure, it's not practical to pursue education. Students believe that education eradicates societal illnesses and that it can lead to better jobs and more thriving communities. So they do believe in the impact of education, positive impact of education on the community and the society. We also held focus group with the parents, with Lebanese parents, and it was alarming to us that some parents believe that students who seek education are wasting money, especially that many of those that they know are currently unemployed. And they refer that to the WASTA system and to other elements that we will talk about a little bit in the recommendations. In the focus groups with Syrian parents, all Syrian students' parents valued education and its role in the development of communities and society as a whole, and they believed that education helps individuals acquire better life opportunities. When it came to teachers of the students, they noted the absence of future goals among the students, and they also reported that students prefer vocational institutes and vocational training because it offers them the ability to work instantaneously upon graduation. There was also complaints about the lack of practical utility of the educational system, especially in high schools. The current economic situation demotivates students from completing their education, with the detection of cases of depression and anxiety among students, according to their teachers, and parents not giving their children sufficient time and care. I will now transfer the mic to my colleague, Diana, who will tell us more about about educational barriers.
So regarding the educational barriers, we don't have enough time to dig into all the details, but we give you a natural or brief idea about what happened. Next, please. So the challenges faced by secondary students, the results show that we have the economic situation, the low grades and the repetition of the classes is an issue, and we should tackle it or should address it, because based on many studies, it showed that We shouldn't do it as a punitive measure. The students should learn from the repetition, but in fact, all the studies show that it's not the case anymore. So we should find other solutions to tackle this issue. Also, we have the social and some tradition in some communities related to early marriage and other problems. Also, we have the family responsibility, which is obviously related to their financial situation. We have also the behavior of some teachers regarding discrimination and teacher bullying. So we see like we have a highest percentage among Lebanese than the Syrian. We don't know here if because of fear they didn't mention that, or I mean that the Syrian refugees. I don't know if this is because of the fear. They don't want to say that they are being bullied, or this is the true situation. Next, please. So we have also the economic situation, as I mentioned previously, and also as we mentioned, and Dr. Anja also mentioned that clearly there is a lot of lack in the life skills implementation, which is very essential in order to prepare students to be ready for employability and to increase their productivity. Also, as I mentioned, the teachers' maltreatment and the lack of access to official documents, which is an issue, while in other countries in the world, they are trying to solve this problem and to give the chance for those students to continue their education by launching different programs to tackle this need. Also, the accommodation problem, a lot of people, they don't have physical access to schools, or they need to pay for buses, and this is not feasible for the majority of refugees or vulnerable population. And lack of unfair distribution of a scholarship. Doesn't mean that we blame the NGOs or people who are working on that, but some people even sometimes they don't know about these scholarships, or they don't have access to people who are distributing these scholarships. Next, please. So regarding the Lebanese parents' perspective on, for students who dropped out, so few Lebanese parents consider the economic as a barrier, so they can't pay for the registration fees of the university, Lebanese university or high school. But the culture sometimes is playing an important role, especially when it comes to for men or for males to join the army and for girls to get married. As for the Syrian parents, parents view the economic situation as a major reason, and they complain about the living expenses in Lebanon, especially now, and the language is a huge barrier. That's why also it's taking 1 year or 2 years, like preparation for the students to be able to join university, which is also a waste of time for some people and waste of money. They consider it in this way. Also, the security concerns. So we have heard a lot of stories, the same stories in Bekaa especially, when they mentioned that sometimes they miss their schools because they're not able to go because they will be arrested by the police. So it's also another issue that we should address. We have also factor facilitating education, like for example, if they receive career guidance, which I know that the Ministry of Education and Higher Education is working on that. So we need to help in these initiatives and to contribute by our expertise in this initiative. Scholarship also play a positive role, and also non-formal education as well, because they are preparing some. We have heard a lot about. UBS is one of the institutions that's working very hard to provide like free sessions regarding digital skills or language, English language, and other things in order to prepare those students to be able to join the tertiary education. As for future plans, most participants who drop out state that they have future plans, but not at the educational level. As I mentioned, joining the army or maybe getting married, and concentration on economic stability for those who dropped out is a priority. As for the NGOs, and we are very grateful for the time that the NGOs gave to us because they were very helpful. And they mentioned like they are providing scholarships, but sometimes 15% of the people who got the scholarship drop, but we don't know the real reason because they are not allowed to go into the social things and things related to values and things related to family issues to intervene and to know why. Okay, next please. So some recommendation. So public sector lacks some resources, especially in terms of being able to accommodate the high number of students, especially when it comes to the refugees, not aware of the new major. So the students are not aware of all the measures that we have on the new major that the labor market is asking for. And maids also are considered till now as main breadwinners, so they prefer to earn money quickly, so not to continue their education. A limited career guidance, so we have to work on that as well in order to make this link between theory and practice, as Dr. Anja also mentioned that in her presentation. Limited number of scholarship, also the lack of access to and awareness about this scholarship is also another issue. The problem also of residency and things related to authentic paper for the Syrian students also should be addressed, and we should follow some best practices in Canada and other places as well. Bullying and favoritism, I guess it came because of some lack of preparation of some teachers in some schools. So ongoing professional development is needed also for the teachers who are working in both public and private. Early marriage and other socio-cultural things should be addressed as well through projects related to gender equality and other issues. Also, as Dr. Anja mentioned, the life skills is very important in order to prepare those students to be more productive in their community and to be able to equip themselves with the skills needed. Finally, I need to thank a big thank to Dr. Hana Ghali and Ms. Fida Alameddin, حملتونا. Thank you for everything, and thank you also for the research office members who contributed to this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you very much, Dr. Nael, for this presentation. I know I have a lot of questions. I'm sure others also do have questions, and please, we encourage you to type up your questions on the chat box, or if you are watching on Facebook, you can also type them as comments on the Facebook Live page. So it's quite interesting, the information you shared with us and the findings and actually the recommendations. And I just wonder if, I think one important question that did come up on the Q&A, and I think, should be addressed right now, is when were these projects implemented? Because I think, when we talk about these challenges, they may slightly have shifted now with the times and the changes of the context. So it is important to mention that the IFI, the Islam Paris Institute project, was implemented during the academic year 2018-2019. And so at the end of last year, when the baccalaureate exams were canceled and kids were at lockdown, is when we implemented the survey post project implementation, and we asked the kids if they're going to go to or going to apply to university or not. The MUBS and the other project as well were implemented during the academic year 2019-2020. So that was before the lockdown. So luckily. And so so these are the time ranges. And this I mentioned that specific aspect because Diana mentioned, how Lebanese families, and I took note of that because it was, struck me quite a lot, thought that socioeconomic status was not a reason for a dropout. And that is probably because the project or the study was implemented before the current times or before October 2019. I can tell you for a fact that there were about quite a large number, so I don't quote a specific number, quite a large number of kids in secondary schools who have been put on wait lists and not registered, or have been registered out of courtesy of the public schools, even though they were not able to pay the tuition fees. Yes, there are tuition fees at public schools in Lebanon, although they are minimal, but still the families have to pay these fees. And there are families who could not afford to pay even this minimum fee this year. So families are struggling. And unfortunately, even though socioeconomic status may not have been a reason for some to drop out, some Lebanese to drop out prior to October 2019, I think it has now slightly changed given the situation. With that,
Dr. Hannah.
Yes, Diana.
It's totally right, because now with COVID also, we have a lot of things that happened among families, and we have heard a lot of new stories now. So definitely, I second you on what you said. Thank you for this note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. So I know you are very excited to watch our video and know more about the activities that the students were immersed in at the American University of Beirut. So with that, I ask my colleagues at IFI to please stream the video again with voice this time. Thank you very much.
الهدف انه نحن نقدر نوعي الطلاب بالمدارس على شو هن الخيارات الموجودة عندهم بالجامعات. ممكن كتير اشخاص يفكروا انه بدهم يعملوا شيء معين يرجعوا يعملوا شيء ثاني.
What's unique about هذا البروجكت هو experiential learning. طبيعة البروجكت إنه immersive.
الواحد لما يكون بالمدرسة يمكن بيكون عم يطلع على الحياة المستقبل من منظار معين، ولكن في اشياء كثير نحن بنقدر نتعرض لها بالجامعه وبرات الجامعه تفرجينا انه في عنا خيارات كثير ايضا نحن ممكن نختارها بالحياه لمستقبلنا.
ما في حدا نقول لا ممنوع، لا انا ما في.
وفكرت انه اللي بيعمل education بس بيعمل معلمة بالمدرسة، ولكن بعدين الحياة فرجتنا انه اللي بيدرس education مش بس بيصير معلمة بالمدرسة، في يكون اشياء كتير تانية.
We say love starts when we push aside our ego and give room for someone else. And in this world, it's going to be very challenging.
جاي من الريف ومن ضايعة يعني.
شباب بس صبايا يحملوا قنينه من هون عبيناها.
طبعا كل هذه الحصص اللي بدكم اياها رح يكون في تطبيقات عمليه جدا رح تشتغلوا. نحن عندنا هون قطعه باليوبي مركز تجريبي يعني تشتغلوا بايدكم اذا حابين وبتشوفوا الامور. نوعا ما المدى قصير كثير لانه الزراعه نتعاطى فيها على مدى طويل مواسم والى اخره، بس برضه في الواحد يتعلم بمده شهر فنيه تمام.
منه poison يعني هذا توكسيك ابدا.
إذا أنا بدي أعطيكم شي نصيحة إنه نقوا الاختصاص اللي بدكم إياه اللي بتحبوه، ما عم نتنافس، بس أهم شيء بالأول تعملوا انجينيرينج.
I'm learning here about electrical engineering and computer. The last session we learned how to make a circuit, and today we're learning how to program a robot.
Under the Humanitarian Engineering Initiative, it was a pleasure for us to introduce students to their field of interest and show them the application of electrical engineering and programming through the various hands-on activities in the sessions. Students showed great interest while applying the concepts they learned in the sessions.
So chemistry is this connection between atoms. Chemistry is when you add a molecule to another molecule and then you have a new product. I developed a lot of techniques هون بالAUB باللاب, and I will be more than happy to share with you these techniques.
We're being trained in this program to do experiments in physics and measure values, and specifically to think in physics, and not only theoretically but also experimentally. This program made me more certain that I want to major in physics in university.
4 modules تلاميذ حيشتغلوا فيهم بالمختبرات ويعملوا actual experiment. كل موديول تقريبا حيكون 3 ساعات.
Architecture combines shelter and culture. هيدا كان جواب واحد طلع انه general answer to the big question. Architecture shapes our minds.
Very rewarding profession. You are going to use this in your daily life. You need to have a very strong personality to be a nurse.
I thought nursing was just like a second hand for the doctor, but actually no, nursing can do a lot of things. You see the nurses there just help these kids to feel better, not just by medicines, also by making them happy. They spread positive vibes to them.
So this program will make these high school students choose nursing as a major, and we wish them all luck.
I learned agriculture about composting, how to do composting, how to have organic pesticides.
I participated in this program, joining the biology department. I was introduced to the lab.
I joined AUB training for students, and it was so much fun.
One of my favorite experiences. Actually, I was thinking about making a hardware engineering in the future, but when I tried software engineering, I found it very interesting.
The goal of this program is to introduce the students to what it's like to be enrolled in the computer science program and what they can expect to learn along the way.
What is really nice about the pre-college mentoring at AUB is that students coming from high schools are so excited to experience the life of a nursing student within only 4 days.
أنا كتير استفدت بهالسيشنز. أنا كنت كتير lucky إنه أنا بالchemistry department.
Studied architecture and design. It was a great experience. We had fun.
ساعدتني وكانت helpful حتى أعرف شو أنا وشو بدي لبعدين وشو الايم تاعي لفوت على ميجر بالجامعة.
وكتير استفدت وحسيت إنه أنا بقدر كفي بهالميجر إن شاء الله مع الأيام يعني.
The UPP was a very fundamental program for us as high school students in order to have a better academic future.
And I'm really grateful for the AUB for giving us a chance to be in such a program.
I just want to say thank you for the AUB for giving me the opportunity to be in this program because it helped me so much and it changed my point of view a lot.
So I would like to thank all the program who helped us, from Dr. Anja and a lot more.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for playing the video and for watching. So after that video, I mean, you probably now have a better idea what we meant by immersed in experiential learning or hands-on learning. So I know that many of you now would like to stretch and probably grab a cup of coffee. So let's take a maybe 5-minute break. If you want to grab your coffee, like I did, or you want to stretch. I know that we are having a very interesting presentation after this break with actually a furry friend as well that I saw over the video. So we'll come back in 5. You can just mute your microphone and keep the video running, and we'll resume in exactly 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, we're back. Thank you very much for sticking around. And our next presenter is going to be Dr. Emily Wills. She's an associate professor of comparative politics at the University of Ottawa. She is the co-director of the Community Mobilization in Crisis Project, which she's going to brief us about shortly, which develops and implements innovative multilingual digital pedagogical tools for teaching community mobilization skills in the Middle East and elsewhere. Her first book, The Arab New York Politics and Community in the Everyday Lives of Arabs, Americans, was published by NYU Press in 2019. Her articles have appeared in several peer-reviewed journals. Her current work focuses on the effects of transnational linkages between the Middle East and North America on everyday politics in the Arab world, with a particular focus on Palestinian transnationalism. With that, I give the floor to Dr. Emily.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Hannan. It's a pleasure to be coming to you from Ottawa in Canada, where it's a bit chillier and snowier than it is today in Beirut, I'm sure. So I'm very pleased to be able to share some of the work that CMIC did, and I just want to start by offering thanks to the Symphatis Institute for the financial support, as well as a great deal of thanks to our partner in implementing this project, the Lebanese Association for Scientific Research, which is an NGO based in Tripoli. So I'm just going to share my slides. So we came to this project as a group that had been working on post-secondary access for Syrians and other marginalized youth in Lebanon for a while, and really kind of viewed this as an opportunity to bring together our programmatic and our research interests, which is why this was such a great opportunity for us. Community mobilization in crisis, as Dr. Hanna introduced us, right? We work on producing these materials for teaching community mobilization. And we have really two interventions that we're aiming to make into the policy and practice space. The first is to try to transform higher education provision, especially in crisis, but not only in crisis, into a learner-centered, socially transformative and experiential model. A lot of higher education institutions focus on strict delivery models, kind of don't adapt to meet the needs of their students today and the needs of their societies today. And in particular, don't incorporate best practices around experiential learning, which is why I'm so glad to see experiential learning come up elsewhere in this conversation. The second thing is, particularly as a university located in Canada, located in Canada's capital, so we see the way the Canadian aid system works, which does a lot of good, but also has a lot of unintended consequences. One of our goals is to reorient international development and humanitarian aid systems into community-owned and led processes where communities themselves are making decisions about what will benefit them, even during crisis periods. So we came into this kind of wanting to understand where students were and then wanting to implement one of our programs. We did a brief survey of existing programs for assisting students getting into higher education in Lebanon, particularly for refugee students. We do not believe we were entirely comprehensive, but from what we could find, roughly half of all programs are scholarships. Supporting and completions, online learning programs are another major component. Supporting students in completion of secondary school or being prepared for higher education are another big component. We also conducted a little mini survey in partnership with Laser, which does not have anywhere near the scope of Dr. Niles' project, so his data is much better than mine. But our findings are in fact very compatible with his, right? Students receive financial support, 100% of university students, which pretty much suggests you can't attend university if you don't receive financial support. The high percentage of both university and secondary school students work for pay, largely to support their families and to pay their own educational costs. The major barriers they identified were English. This was huge for secondary school students. The ones who got to university seem to have overcome it mainly. Difficulty with the curriculum. Again, we were dealing with a lot of students in grade 10, 11. So they kind of experienced this, particularly in that transition from the brevet into the baccalaureate program. And kind of questions of unfamiliarity with majors and of course, funding. Lots of students received academic or English language support or other kinds of psychosocial support. So there are programs in place, but this is challenging for students to navigate frequently. So what we do, and this is what CMIC does, is that we work together with local partners to implement programs where communities seek to identify their problems and develop their own solutions. And our job is to guide that process in the sense of being kind of supportive and bringing outside resources, but to really let the ideas come from the communities themselves. We've run a bunch of these all over the world. We've run them in Lebanon, in the Kurdish region of Iraq, in Brazil, here in Canada. So we do this frequently. This is the first one we've done that had a theme, right? In that specifically, we wanted students to address, first of all, that we were only looking for secondary and university students to participate. And that we wanted them to address barriers to education. Normally, we leave it open. We say, what are the problems your community faces? How could you deal with them? We've gotten things like, like new bus systems to villages in Ba'a and things like that, right? But kind of this time we were like, okay, let's talk about education. Originally, we were scheduled for 6 sessions. We had to add 3 more because the students wanted more help and were excited about it. And then in fact, there was a support for implementation. The youth identified the problems. The youth developed the community mobilization skills and pitched their own interventions. And then 3 of those were put into an implementation phase, which hit the COVID wall. We ran into the COVID wall head first, going 100 miles an hour, which has affected implementation. But we got up to that point. So I just wanted to walk you through just to kind of show how the students, when asked to solve problems that they were facing, actually came up with things. One of the kind of findings that's important for this participatory work is that when you ask communities to identify their problems and develop solutions, frequently you get the exact same answers, but you get much greater buy-in from that process, right? And so kind of, it's not that experts know better, it's that everyone can reach the same analysis, but that they do it in different ways and you get different process out of it. So these are the 6 initiatives that were proposed. As I said, only 3 went forward. The first one was a peer tutoring system for students in grade 10. As we've talked about, grade 10 is a crucial moment because the difficulty level from going to the brevet to the baccalaureate studies jumps a lot. In addition, students move from a second shift school, frequently for Syrian refugee students, where they're only learning with other Syrians, into a mixed environment, which means that there are new expectations, new linguistic expectations, more social conflict sometimes. So this was a group of grade 10 students who developed and pitched the idea for a tutoring program that would specifically aim to involve older Syrian students as well. This is a group of, the second initiative is a group of students in a university program, mostly run by Laser, who wanted to address the issue of kind of the shame that people felt about poor English skills, which is very stigmatizing for Syrians in the Lebanese school system, and that kind of using conversational English practice with native speakers and with other learners as a way to increase this. Another proposed project was interesting because it was kind of volunteering with an agenda, which is to say that it was to put together groups of Syrian and Lebanese high school students for a activity like volunteering in the community, but the actual intention would be to build better relationships between Syrians and Lebanese students. Yalanihi was a proposal to develop conversations for girls around their issues and kind of provide peer support. The Hope Scholarship Platform, the idea behind it was that there are so many scholarships out there, right? Scholarships are a major modality of aid in this area, and nobody knows where they are and nobody knows how to apply for them. And for students who are not #1 in their class, the kind of logistical barriers increase. So to kind of ease the scholarship program process. And the last one is Life Bond, which was the proposal of a movie club to enable more discussion of people's social problems and to provide support through a fun activity, right? That would kind of transition this. So these were the 6 projects that the students proposed. And the 3 that were selected for continued mentorship were the English group, the peer tutoring group, and the scholarship group. And kind of what we wanted to point out, this is a fancy slide to say, English, dealing with the curriculum and addressing financial barriers are 3 of the biggest barriers students identify, right? And so being able to target those with student proposed projects, and these were chosen not because the jury did not say, oh, the 3 major problems we have already identified are this, so we're going to pick the problems with this. They picked the best projects, but they happen to correspond to these 3 most important issues. So what happened with the projects? They were in the middle of a period of extended mentorship and support. They were provided with a small budget. Came to something like $300 US at the time, but the exchange rates fluctuated, so it's who knows how much that would be worth now. We're still gift transferring $300 US if we can. And the goal was to move these into implementation. The only one that managed to hold a first session before the lockdown was the peer tutoring group. This is the first peer tutoring session. They recruited university students who were studying the subjects and were also refugees to tutor the high school students. The English Fun group had a kind of trial meeting to make sure things worked, and we're kind of figuring out dynamics, and then lockdown happened. So kind of that's the moment when there's been a pause. So now I think the question is going to be whether these same students want to continue these projects, the extent to which Laser wants to take what they learned from this. We are proposing with Laser some more projects to incorporate this on an ongoing basis. The recommendations that we have, and these are less specific to the educational field and more specific to this kind of broader question of what do we do and trying to get change across, but I think they're very applicable in the education field, right? When you're working with youth or with marginalized communities in any space, it's really important to give them the power to help co-design what's going to be done. This design did not come from Ottawa. It did not even come from the Laser staff in Tripoli, right? Ottawa took what we knew. We went and had great meetings and ate za'atar croissants and planned things in Laser's offices. And then Laser staff said, okay, bring this stuff in, right? And then the young people said, we really don't feel like we know enough about this, and pushed their ideas forward, right? And so that gave the ability for everybody to feel like a participant in this. The other thing that's really important is that differences, people can pitch these ideas, develop them, advance them, move them forward. They need the tools and the kind of permission and empowerment to engage in this kind of work, and then they need support to follow through to implementation, right? This is not a question of dumping expertise onto people. This is a question of figuring out what people need and connecting them to resources. And with that, here is the entire crowd from the finale day, where I was unfortunately not able to be there. But it was a wonderful experience working with the youth. I think we learned a lot. I hope they learned a lot. And I think that it really shows the potential of kind of building some of these collaborative learning opportunities as a way both to address big problems and then also to give people these 21st century skills of collaboration and cooperative learning and self-directed learning that make such a difference in outcomes. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emily, for this overview and how you walked us through the engagement of the youth. I think you hit on very important skills when Dr. Angela was talking about, and also Diana was talking about the 21st century skills. You know, the issue of communication and language are quite essential and becoming more essential also in the 21st century. Also, the issue of the barriers is quite a pressing issue that remains with us, whether it's the language, financial, or the curriculum. Actually, these three barriers were the same barriers that we came across when we first started to research the issue of higher education and refugees. And so it's apparently persistent also prior to higher education. And finally, I'd like to also comment on the idea that you mentioned, giving youth a voice. I think it's quite critical to engage youth as we pursue any change that we need. And so this is quite a very important idea. Thank you very much. And last but not least is our colleague from ULIP. Nicole Aid Abu Haidar is the executive director of the NGO Unite Lebanon Youth Project in Beirut, Lebanon. She joined ULIP at its inception in 2010, applying best practices from her 35 years of experience in education as a teacher, principal, and consultant in Lebanon and the US. At ULIP, Ms. Abu Haidar develops and implements innovative interventions to open pathways to success for members of the marginalized and refugee communities. Her career includes work as regional director for the US Department of Labor's program to eradicate child labor in Yemen and Lebanon. She also managed Middle East Partnership Initiative program at MEDIS in Lebanon for empowering professionals and a World Bank project for children at risk of dropping out. Ms. Abu Haidar led the groundwork for introducing community service into the Lebanese national curriculum and served as an advisor to the Minister of Education and Higher Education at the time. In 2017, she presented at the Arab Conference at Harvard entitled Empowering the Next Generation, and at the Nexus inaugural Arab Future Summit on the needs of refugee children and models of interventions to meet these young people. Ms. Abu Haidar graduated from AUB with a BA in MA and continued her studies at Teachers College Columbia in NYC to receive a Doctor of Education. Ms. Abu Haidar, Dr. Abu Haidar, you can take the mic on. I think you need to unmute yourself. We see your presentation.
Okay. Okay, I'm here. Let's see. Okay, escape, sorry, stop share. I'm gonna try again. Okay, sorry about this. Why does it disappear? Okay, share screen, okay. Okay, sorry, here I am. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it, thank you.
Okay, so I'm very honored and happy to be here. And actually it's fantastic to hear from all of you and see how much in common we have in terms of who we are serving, the findings that we have concluded from our work, whether directly through our research or not. The case study that I am here to present to you today is based on a program which we had called the Change Program. And with its slogan, it's change starts with education. What I would like to do is introduce to you this NGO, my NGO, the NGO I work at in the capacity, as the doctor said, executive director. So my effort to tell you about the NGO is to give you the context of our case study, so you understand who we are and how it is, what is it that we are trying to do. We are an NGO that was founded in 2010, and yes, I have joined at inception. And in the beginning, the very, very beginning at inception, the question was that we were trying to answer is, what is our role? What is our role? We had to define our role in preparing the youth of today to become not only agents of change, but also of positive change actively. So we put together our mission, and we decided on our message, Al-ikhtilaf la yuaddi ila khilaf. Diversity is a cause to celebrate, not to discriminate. And we identified our target population, who's the same population we have been talking about, the marginalized, vulnerable, underserved, refugee youth living in Lebanon. We recognized very early on, because of the different experience that the team has, and we all put it together in one place, that our target population has a lot of challenges that they are facing. And today we heard some of the regular challenges they have and some of the newest ones, and the ones that have emerged as of our crisis and the pandemic. So with this in mind, we decided, possibly uniting and working together is not very high on their list of priorities. So what are we going to do? We decided on the tool to impact and get to where we want to do. And for us, the tool is education as a powerful tool to get people to change. And through this tool, we actually started putting together our programs and identifying what is it that we can do for this target population, the vulnerable youth. We went around and examined what do all these children and youth that we're working with or targeting, are they accessing education? And if yes, is it quality education? Are they actualizing the right to education and to tertiary education? And are they supported enough to get there? We found out that no, as you all know. And so we started identifying what are the areas that we can intervene. And this is a tree of some of the services that we have put together. And it all, we translate every service into different programs like, Happy, Harmony, Rainbow. Every program, every service we have comes under a program, under a name. And Change, the one I'm talking about, is one of them. So I will present it to you. I'll present this program as a case study where we have some results, but not as thorough as the results of all of you that you had presented, but we soon will have all that. I'm just going to go very simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is this program? This is a program that has only one goal, and the goal is to support, it's a big goal, to support the vulnerable youth in their transition between secondary and tertiary education. Because as you have all said, there are many barriers in front of these people, and there are many obstacles, and as of late, even harder situations and harder challenges. So how do we select them? Well, we go to, with a consent of our donors, because we are very donor driven, we agree on the profile, we agree on the length of the program, and then we work with the students. We select the areas, and so far we have worked in the Saida and the general area of Saida, Shuf, Beirut, and Mount Lebanon. And we identify the criteria, and then we contact organizations, schools, UNRWA, Ministry of Education, depending on the size of the program, and they nominate to us some students. Then we go and meet them, and we try to get the meet and see who meets our eligibility criteria. It's usually nationality, background, socioeconomic, but most importantly, that the child or the person we are targeting in this program has no access to any other support. So if a program is, if a 12th grader, for example, is receiving help from X NGO or X organization, then we say, okay, great, keep your seat for someone who really has no access, but wants to improve and wants to this transition. And as such, we select our students. Number 2 is the 2 main major components that we have in this program. The main one is skills for academic support, and our focus there is English. I believe this evening we have heard a lot about the situation of English for this target population, particularly the Syrians and the Syrian refugees. And for us, English is if they are better in English, they're better in biology, in math, in physics, in chemistry, and in their application to university and at university. So that is what we focus in academically, and it spills over to the others. The second component is life skills. And really our focus is on resilience, on leadership, on team building, on tolerance, acceptance, because that's our mission. But as of late, we found ourselves increasing the number of sessions we have towards the well-being of the youth, because they are very anxious, they are very afraid. As it is at 12th grader, there's so much uncertainty. I'm finishing my school, now what? Add to it crisis, add to it pandemic, add to it all the things that we are going through. So our life skill component has become super important. And we keep including it, and we keep doing that because the need is getting only higher. The number 3 for me is the phases. So just like you were talking before me, yes, we customize these phases, not because we decided to. We talked to the youth, the participants over time, observed, surveyed, asked, and talked to the teachers, and we realized that we might as well structure our program in 3 phases. Phase 1, when we meet the youth, we work a lot on where are they in English, and we meet them there. And the focus there is how can we help them quickly do better at their English at their schools, because as you know, to transition to university, they need at the end to enter university their grades, and grades should be better to have a better chance. So we fill the gaps. For example, we very often find students who are studying verb to be in the future tense, but they don't know what verb to be is in the past tense or the present tense. So we fill gaps, the first phase. The second phase, we focus a lot on preparing them to take and succeed at the official exams, again, because universities require that. And so we do a lot of studying on the Shamil, previous exams that have taken place, and we start analyzing these and solving these and equipping them with the tool. Come the official exams and they finish the 12th grade, then we have 3 months with them where we really immerse into English, life skills for life, for university, for even if they want to go to work. And these last 3 months really make, put it all together for them. And it's when they change. And this is when they actually, one student have said, you got it. The name of the program is exactly right. The change starts with education, but we have to make the youth have to decide to change. And you've convinced us that we can do something. We have the potential. My number 4 is how many years have we been doing the program? We are in the 4th year. In the first year, we piloted the program. We had a donor who said, I want you to take 12th graders, mainly Syrians, but we negotiated to include marginalized Lebanese and Palestinians too, with different percentages, and we piloted. And we learned a lot of lessons there, and that's where the phases became clearer and the structure became clearer. And when another donor approached us, we said, listen, we have to do it over 2 years. 1 year intervention is great, but 2 years will make a better difference. So they agreed, and they asked us to work with 300 youth in the Saida, Shuf, and Mount Lebanon. And we started this program, and it was going very nicely until, again, we hit the barrier of COVID. So we pivoted to online, and they responded very quickly to us, and we did a lot of things there. During this period, the pilot of year 1 actually won an award for all its intervention. And so we got very encouraged to keep doing it. And just 2 months ago, September, we launched this year's change program, 2021. And again, we shifted back to 1 year because the donor asked this, and it's actually the same donor of year 1, but it's a larger group. For the case study and how we are going to move forward from here and reach the point where you all have reached, where you have results and data, we are going to be, the methodology we are going to follow is similar to what you all have done. The program documents, we put all these programs together. What were the goals? What have we written in our proposals? What have we done? We have conducted several surveys because we always ask the students, how are you doing? Do you need more of this? Or best time to meet, or collecting grades. So we get the survey results and conduct more. Every implementing person working with me on this project, whether teacher, facilitator, field officer, they have to send in the reports. We will conduct focus groups with the youth and try to understand their needs better, how this program is going with them. And we will interview, now that we have a large pool of alumni programs from the previous years, we will also include the data we collect from them. We will also spill out a little bit into other programs that TULIP has done and is doing in general. For example, our Bridge program, which actually targets mainly Palestinians and also has a 2-year prep program. We'll see how, if we need any more data, we'll get there. Probably the question that you are asking is, what about the impact? How impactful has this program been? And this is actually what we are planning on doing from here on. The study that now we are going, thank you for giving us this opportunity, will allow us to really delve deeper into this question and get more quantitative and qualitative data so we can understand how impactful, what are our recommendations, what are our suggestions. Granted, We kind of know a lot of this because every donor that we work with, we have to report. So we have our assessments there. But now within this context that you have kindly asked us to join, we will delve further and deeper into it. And I believe a lot of the basic research that I heard tonight, I believe we'll find similar results. The stories sound very familiar to me. I heard from our colleague from MU at BS, when a student says, oh, my teacher always asks me to sit in the back because I'm Syrian, or we have heard that too. And things like that. So we will get more data and we will present it hopefully next time we have a chance. I try to stick to my 7 minutes. And so I don't know if it's time for Q&A or I will leave it all until we are all, I'll let the moderator decide on that. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for, very encouraging to see such programs support youth in their transition. And again, your programs are addressing exactly some of the issues that have come up in the previous research studies that we heard today. I just wanted to mention that all the studies, with the exception of the one that was just presented by ULIP, are going to be published on IFI's website very soon. So stay tuned. So now, after the questions and answers, I think we have a handful of questions and answers. One of them was when the studies were done, and I did answer that in terms of 2018-19, the pre-college mentoring program, and the other two were implemented in 1920. We have another question regarding guidance and counseling towards TVET, and maybe here, Dr. Anja and Dr. Nael, you can address this question. Do you think that guidance and counseling towards TVET may have better traction with students in secondary school, as it costs less and provides better opportunities for employment? Dr. Anja, would you like to go first?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dr. Hannah, and we hope so. We have challenges in implementing our program. As you know, we have a donor, and if we don't have a donor, we cannot continue or sustain such a program. And this goes well also for the vocational program or any technical program. I guess students also, they need support. They need support not only in the academic subjects, but rather in as all colleagues said, about the life skills and about the well-being, which will promote their academic success at school and later in life. So I don't know. This is what about Dr. Nael? If he wants to add anything, Dr. Nael?
Yeah, the question is a great question, as you said, Dr. Inja. Last semester, and I'm talking about the spring semester of last year, we've implemented a life skills course at the university across all campuses. The feedback that we've received from students was very encouraging. It was very, very positive response. So definitely we haven't studied that yet. We've collected some information, some data from our students, university level students. The indicators are positive in that sense, in terms of support for students, the fact that they feel more supported, the fact that they feel they can deal with difficulties and problems, and you know how much of that we have in Lebanon. So signs are encouraging in terms of supporting students by integrating life skills training into their curriculum, whether on high school level or university level. But hopefully we'll have more better results soon in terms of that.
Thank you very much. If I may also add, it's I think that particularly the pre-college mentoring program did not kind of marginalize vocational education. It's just that it just focused on higher education. And that does not kind of say that or send the message that, it's not a good option to also provide guidance and counseling to secondary school students on vocational tracks. No, not at all. It's just that vocational education was beyond the scope of, I think, the studies that are featured here. Having said that, though, I think it would be very important also for the Lebanese government to take a closer look at the vocational education in Lebanon, and to reconsider how this sector or subsector can be revamped in order to address the current demand within the labor market for such skills, if you may. And so it's very important. Usually when I say we, I mean researchers, but also donors and international organizations may get more carried away and pay attention to general education or higher education, and Tibet or vocational education tends to kind of take a side in that. So it is very important that we focus on that. But my concern, if you may, is that we don't tend to channel kids to vocational education because it is less expensive or it is an easy way out. So this kind of perception of vocational education, I think, is very important to change. Vocational education and technical education are very important. And we have very well-known technical schools all over the world, in Europe and elsewhere. And they are very essential in our communities and societies. And so it's important to also change this perception that we have within the Lebanese society particularly, and also in the minds of the children. Another question also, this is to you, Dr. Nael. Why is the percentage of males in your sample more than the females, while the dropout rates among males is higher? If you'd like to comment on that. Probably, I don't know if we are kind of seeing a reverse gender impact of the economic situation or whatnot. Please, Dr. Nael, go ahead.
It's true. I tried to answer the question briefly. It's true that the number of dropouts in high school, as well as in universities, we observe a higher number of male students. And that was reflected in the focus groups that we held with students who have dropped out, because we only held these focus groups with students who have already dropped out. And we do have a higher proportion of males in those focus groups. Regarding the response to our surveys, though, that was out of our control. So it was a 34%, approximately a 34% response rate. And that was out of our control in terms of we did not select the students, the gender of the students that responded to our surveys. And I'm not sure whether there was a specific reason that discouraged female students from participating and responding to our surveys or not, but it's something to look at for sure. It's true, though, that more males are dropping out of high school and from tertiary education in general.
Dr. Nael, I have a quick question. I too have observed, because in this, it's always the females who are more 60%, 70% females. The survey was conducted using Google Forms, or was it on their phones, or was it by paper? How did you conduct the survey?
No, so because we conducted the surveys in underserved areas, we wanted to make sure that we used paper forms. So we got the help of school principals in different regions, and they were the ones helped by their teachers. They were the ones who distributed those forms among their students.
Okay.
So they are all hard forms. We didn't use any Google Forms or any soft documents.
You know, I'm finding out that the youth love the Google form. They do need reminders, but they do respond quite fast, particularly if, you know, the link is also available for them on the phone. I don't know, that's my recent thing, because since COVID, actually since the revolution, I'm sorry?
We can try that again, but we've had less response when we used Google Forms in previous studies.
I mean, it's shifting. It's just different population.
Shifting and changing, so we can.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I'm just sharing my experience.
You bring up also a very interesting issue. Maybe we can have a webinar on that, which is research during COVID, and particularly with children, because and youth, because it becomes a big challenge if you want to try to reach the younger kids who don't have access necessarily to such tools, or the younger kids to attract them and whatnot. So it's a very interesting issue, and definitely very well needed event on that. Thank you very much. And thank you for your answer.
Hannah, if I may.
Yes, please, Diana, go ahead.
I may add one thing related to the topic regarding technical schools. I guess also we should work a lot on minimizing the stigmatization among those people who are enrolled in technical schools in Lebanon, because we have this perception that people who fail, they go into technical schools, which is a misconception, definitely. And also it's this, like it's not, it demotivated the students to continue their education and to reach the labor market with strong skills, if we may say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, Diana. This is a very good idea. Yeah.
Also, another point regarding, are you hearing me?
Go ahead, Diana, go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Another point regarding regarding the dissemination of information, not only the survey among the people, especially now in COVID-19 pandemic. Also, it's very true, because also the dissemination of the correct information is very, very hard, because people who don't have access to social media that is disseminating the information are not aware of what's happening, and this is also another issue. So digital skills also, as a part of the life skills, is also very important to highlight it and to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For sure. I mean, a survey was done at EUB when, after the first semester of teaching online. And one of the findings of that survey with students about their experience with online learning was that it's not only that, attending online courses was sometimes difficult to follow and whatnot, but also that some of the students didn't have the skills needed to follow online courses, to do some of the assignments, to engage in exams and whatnot, and other things. So these digital skills are definitely, hot and important to make sure that we incorporate them in our curricula, but also in programs like the ones we listened to and heard. My next question is for Dr. Emily and also for Dr. Nicole. So did you follow any of the cohorts who went through your programs, any of your programs, and particularly for Dr. Emily, the program that you implemented in Lebanon? And how do you see the current situation in the country, whether it's the socioeconomic situation or COVID, is impacting these youth and their progression into higher ed or other pathways? We'll start with you, Dr. Emily.
Yeah, so we are still in contact with a good proportion of the young people who went through our program. Sorry, my colleague Zaina from Laser isn't here, because she's the one who does more contact with them than I do. So we know that all of them were affected by the shutdown in terms of pausing their high school completion. I believe the students who were in the online university programs were still continuing their education, but again, big problems in Tripoli with resources and institutions for online learning, right? As there are in lots of places in Lebanon. So we're staying in touch with these cohorts of students, and right now our big question to them is whether these still feel like the interventions that they need. And so I think that's where we're going, is to figure out whether kind of their needs have shifted. And that's kind of a new phase of research that we need to be moving into.
From me too, yes, we definitely do. We absolutely do, because they become, I always joke, once a ULIPer, you always a ULIPer. So we stay in touch with them, and anytime we have an, and I constantly talk to the donors and say, please give us continuity. So for the first cohort in our pilot, out of the 70 that were involved there, 45 actually, we were able to match them with scholarships, because their English and their has improved enough for them to make it not necessarily to AUB or LAU, but to other universities, with some required more support. The second cohort of the 2-year intervention, their second year was mainly online. So there we had to really intervene and stay in touch with them. Granted, when the pandemic hit us here, I confess that for 4 or 5 weeks, I guess, like, what the heck is going on? How am I going to manage the office? But then soon after that, we started contacting our students and surveyed them. How many are engaged with online learning? How are you doing? And the problems are what you all hear. So I put my foot down. I said, we are not going to teach on WhatsApp. We are going to find alternatives. So we found alternatives by, again, repurposing. So a lot of negotiations to repurpose funds we had on hand that we had for buses and food for them to come to us. And we bought them recharge cards for their phones. In some particular cases, we matched them with laptops. And we started slowly with asynchronous sessions because things were not very stable for them. So we gave them time. So a PowerPoint or a program, a lesson that we gave that actually spoke to it by itself. And then I worked a lot and very hard with the teachers who were teaching with me. I said, look, online doesn't mean just take what you're doing into the classroom and take it in front of a screen. So use the Zoom's ability to do breakout rooms, do the think, pair, share, do the small group interventions, make sure that there's always a stretching and this and this and this. So we're back on track. And the cohort that just graduated, this cohort that started with the pandemic, again, slowly, we're trying to match them with scholarships. I'm already 25 in. I have a lot more, but when we surveyed them, some of them are actually with you, Dr. Na, and some went to vocational schools. And so today, actually, I asked for the names of the ones who made it to vocational schools. I want to really understand how they're doing, what are they studying, and see what it is. I believe continuity is very important. I believe we NGOs or any of us working in the field, it is our job to keep educating the donors and our partners to say continuity, continuity, continuity. And now I'm really investigating short-term interventions that are online, like boot camps and things like that are all very 22nd century skills and actually will lead straight into employability. So yes, we do follow up with them. Yes, we follow through with them, and they come back as volunteers and they come back at things. So we're trying our best, and this last period has been difficult, but that's where we're heading.
Thank you very much. I know that many of you may have more questions, but unfortunately we're out of time, and we're going to, as I mentioned earlier, publish these reports, and we're also welcome Yulip to send us any information that you'd like to publish also as part of this initiative. I'd like to close by thanking each of the presenters and researchers who have worked with us on this project. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Anja, who worked on this program from the start with us. Thank you very much for your hard work. And particularly, I'd like to thank the communications team at IFI and my colleague Fida Alamuddin, who is the silent person, but has been doing a lot of work to make this a huge success. Thank you very much, Fida. You're outstanding. And I'd like to close with just a thought that all of the research we've been doing, featuring today and talking about kind of focuses on the transition from school to college. But I think we also have a big problem in our context in Lebanon, particularly for vulnerable, but everybody, not just vulnerable youth. And that is the transition from school to work. That is, whether it's college, whether it's high school, whether it's vocational or whatnot. And I know that's obviously a problem within Lebanon. It's probably global now with the pandemic and whatnot. But in a fragile context like Lebanon, I think this becomes more of an issue to think about. What are our education systems doing to prepare those kids to enter into the labor market and make, respond to the demand of the labor market and provide the right supply. So with that, I thank you very much. Have a great evening or rest of the day, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
وعليكم السلام. هلا خلصنا هالثانية يعني